Greetings and welcome back to the No Channel. This is Bernadette Johnson. I'm also known as Kazaya or Kizzy. And today I'm coming to you with another video. And this one is I'm going to be talking about Pope Leo the 14th and his interesting speech he gave the other day concerning his ancestry. And as you see on the screen, this is a screenshot of the article that I read where he gave his speech. And now, when he first became pope, we were aware of his mixed ancestry. So this is really nothing new. But I don't recall him ever being as, how can I say it, open and as explicit as he was in this speech here. So the article is not that long. So I'm going to put the article on the screen. So I'm gonna exit out of this if I can. Let's see. Yeah. So I'm going to exit out of the PowerPoint temporarily. And I'm going to pull up the article. Okay, so this is from the CNN News website. So it says Pope Leo says his ancestors were both slaves and slave owners. And this was on July the 30th of this year. And that's the author, who wrote the article. So it says Pope Leo the 14th has delved into his family history, revealing his ancestry, include both enslaved people and slave owners. I came from a family that my grandparents were immigrants. The first American pontiff told NBC News in the Vatican Gardens of Castel Gandolfo on Wednesday. On my mother's side, we have people who were both slaves and slave owners. Leo spoke about his family's historical links to the transatlantic slave trade on Wednesday in response to a reporter's question about his American heritage. Asked what he loves about his homeland, the Pope also said he highly values the United States' sense of freedom, the sense of opportunity, and of having invited for generations people from around the world to be part of America. The importance of welcoming new arrivals is a message the Chicago-born Pope has repeatedly sent to the U.S. as he criticized the inhuman treatment of immigrants during the Trump administration's crackdown. Homecoming for Pope Leo? Leo XIV also raised the possibility of visiting the U.S. at some point over the next 2 years. They will see me there, he said. By coincidence, today we were looking at the calendar for the next couple of years. Nothing is set in stone yet, but I certainly hope to be there soon. If a papal visit were to take place within the next 2 years, it would likely be in 2027 as the head of the Catholic Church generally doesn't visit a country during an election year. Aware of being overly defined by his country of birth, the pontiff told reporters he sees himself as a pope who happens to be American, with a mission to lead a church spread across the world. Although he pointed out that his family is still in the United States, before adding, I have great love for America. Any papal trips to the U.S. would need careful diplomatic negotiation given recent tensions between the White House and the papacy. Earlier this year, President Donald Trump launched a series of broadsides against Leo, accusing him of being weak on crime. This came after the Pope spoke out against the U.S. military intervention in Iran. Leo's remarks on his family history came after research found he had a mix of European and African American ancestors. His maternal grandparents, residents of New Orleans, are described in census records as Black and mulatto. The research conducted by scholar Henry Louis Gates Jr. also revealed that the Pope's ancestors included both slave owners and enslaved people. Earlier this year, Leo made history by becoming the first pontiff to publicly acknowledge and apologize for the Catholic Church's role in slavery. In his teaching document on artificial intelligence, he asked for pardon for the church's slowness to condemn the slave trade, saying it was impossible not to feel deep sorrow when contemplating the immense suffering and humiliation endured by so many. So that concludes the article. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. Now, if you all, let me put it back on the presentation. Okay. Now, if you all followed my channel, from last year, you would remember that I actually, sorry about that. Let me get this screen right. Oh boy. Okay, there we go. Now, if you had followed my channel, last year, you would have known that I did two videos regarding the Pope. One was on the death of Pope Francis, which was a Pope that preceded Pope Leo. Yeah, Pope Leo succeeded Pope Francis. And of course, they didn't select a pope right away. They it took some time for them to select a new pope after the death of Pope Francis. And in that video that I did on the death of Pope Francis, I broke down, some of the spiritual meaning behind his death and like the numbers, the symbolism and all of that. And then after they selected Pope Leo the 14th, I did one on him, and I also made mention of his, black ancestry, partially black ancestry, and also his possible connection to the Sibyls. And those of you who follow my channel, I've done several videos on the Sibyls, so you can check out my Sibyls playlist. I may mention the Sibyls toward the end of this video, but right now I'm going to talk about the video I did where I talked about the death of Pope Francis, and how he was 88 years old when he died. And I broke down, let me go to the next slide. And in that, this was from that video, and I talked about the 8, because he was 88 years old when he died, and the meaning of 88, the different meanings of 88, how it's connected to karma, and also new beginnings and the resurrection. So if you don't remember all what I said in that video, or if you haven't watched it, you can go back and watch it, because I'm not going to go in any great detail in that video. However, in that video, I didn't go any further than the 88. And with numerology, it's ideal to break the number all the way down, because of course 8 plus 8 equals, it equals 16, and then 16 breaks further down to 7 like it is on the screen. However, in the video where I talked about the death of Pope Francis, I didn't break it down to 7. I just stayed on 88. And when I would think about that, I would kind of beat myself up to say, why didn't I break it down further? Why didn't I break it down further? And then sometimes you think that you made a mistake, but then you realize that you didn't really make a mistake, because had I had broken it down to 7, the message I would have given wouldn't have been complete. Now I have more pieces to the puzzle where I can give a more complete message when breaking down the number 7. So let's go. So as you know, he was 88 years old. 8 plus 8, 16, and 1 plus 6 is 7. So what does now 7 is pretty much a no-brainer as far as the meaning. I'm sure most of us knows, the meaning of 7, the spiritual meaning of 7 means complete. There's 7 days in the week. The Sabbath is the 7th day. It also means divine perfection, seeker of truth. And of course, these are the more of a further breakdown. This is just an AI overview. So as I said, also too, like looking past surface appearance to find hidden truth, spiritual independence, all of that. And so as far as that 7 in regards to the death of Pope Francis, and many people saw something spiritual behind his passing and like the timing of it, and how it kind of marked the completion of something. A lot of us are experiencing a divine shift taking place. And we know, I mean, of course, we know the Pope was a human. We know humans are mortal. So they're gonna die at some point. In 88, of course, that was a good long life. So it's not like he died prematurely, but for some reason it was things we were seeing that led up to the time when he died. And we just sensed it wasn't just an ordinary death, an ordinary passing. And a lot of us saw this. And then that 7 kind of symbolizes that completeness. That this old, it was a sign that this old order is going out and a new order is coming in. A new governorship is coming in, is being ushered in. And as I broke down the 8, I'm also breaking down the number 7. I didn't do it in the previous video, but I'm doing it now. And now is the time to do it. And so this was like the breakdown of the meaning of 7. Also, staying on 7. Now, those of you who've seen some of my other videos, I mentioned some like astrology, the zodiac signs. And if this is your first time watching my video, there are times where I do mention astrology. And if you're, kind of offended by it or put off by it, turned off by it, understand that astrology is in the Bible. I'm not going to go into any detail on where it is in this video, just for the second time. But astrology is in the Bible, and it's not. And of course, it's been hijacked by pagans, from ancient times. They've hijacked it. They attached their pagan gods to the zodiac, to astrology. And it sort of got, tainted, got corrupted. But let me tell you, astrology is biblical, because these are celestial governing bodies created by the Most High. And each of them, just like how the angels have certain assignments in regards to the earth, in regards to mankind, these heavenly bodies also have certain assignments. They serve a certain purpose. So there are 12 zodiac signs. And if you count from Aries to Libra, Libra is number 7. So we're still in that 7. The Libra zodiac sign is number 7. I just I'll show you about what 7 and what it means, spiritually. So let's go to the next slide and see what Libra means and what Libra symbolizes. So Libra means balance, harmony, fairness. And as I said, it's the 7th astrological sign. And these are like the Libra dates and all of that. And like the ruling planets and things like that. And other things it says is diplomatic. Keep that diplomatic in mind. Fair-minded, charming, artistic. So the thing is, it's all about balance. It's about harmony. So that balance, that kind of falls in line with the, for us like the completion. 7 being completion. Fair, making things right. So there's the Libra. That's what it means, the Libra, the 7th zodiac sign. All right, let's continue. Also, too, staying on 7. Now, I hope I'm not scaring any of you all. What you see on the screen here are the 7 principles of Ma'at. Now, many of you may know that the Ma'at, that's the name of an Egyptian goddess. But stay with me. Stay with me. But if you read the 7 principles of Ma'at, that's supposedly from ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, Now, it goes into more depth, but just the basic 7 principles. First is truth, justice, righteousness, and righteousness in some sites, it's righteousness is called propriety, and reciprocity, and balance or order and harmony. And so, of course, truth based in fact with honesty and integrity, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Justice, a state of fairness and lawful judgment, and also to righteousness, a state of consistent good conduct. What goes around comes around, reciprocity. Balance, an equal distribution of weight. Order, the correct sequence of thought and action. Harmony, one accord, a pleasing arrangement. And that this is just the African proverb: the world is equally divided between good and evil. Your next act will tilt the scale. That's just an African proverb. But anyway, the 7 principles, my principles of my art is just, these are just universal things, and you see these same concepts in the scripture. So this is just some universal. But the reason I'm mentioning the principles of my art to show how it's consistent with that 7 Libra energy. These are all universal concepts, that it doesn't matter, a person's, faith or quote unquote religion. These are things humankind, that they live by. And of course, each culture, they attach their idols, they attach their gods to it. And like I said, principles of Ma'at, that's the name of an Egyptian goddess. But actually, if you break down this word, it's much deeper than just the name of a goddess. And I would like to recommend also too, for instance, now, if you just do a search where Ma'at, and you try to find out what it means in Hebrew. Now, if you just do an AI search, this will come up on what it means in Hebrew. It just means to be small, few, or diminished. And said that, but Egyptian Ma'ats refer to truth, balance, and cosmic order and justice. But it said the Hebrew verb used when quantities, resources, or people become reduced or too small. So really, it said it's unrelated. It's though it sounds identical to the unrelated Hebrew root word ma'at, meaning to be small. Now, if you just did a search like this, you would kind of be turned off and say, okay, well, there's nothing to this, because the Hebrew word for it is not positive. But I would recommend you not to stop there. And that's why I would recommend you check out Brother Matt D. Talford. I've recommended his channel in quite a few of my videos. And the other night, he did an excellent breakdown of the Noahide laws. Now, I'm not sure if any of you know about the Noahide laws. I think it was how can I say it? The Ish community came up with the 7 Noahide laws. And then in this live, he compared the 7 Noahide laws to the 7 principles of Ma'at. And it's the title of it: Man's Law versus Universal Law. Who's really in charge? Now, the live was over 2.5 hours long. So if you don't wish to watch the entire live, he started talking about the Ma'at and the breaking down of what Ma'at really means, giving the Hebrew meaning of Ma'at. He starts explaining that in around the 59:50 mark. So if you want to check out his videos where he breaks it down, and the reason why I'm mentioning the principles of Ma'at in this one, I would recommend you check his video out, because there's no need of me, repeating what he says. You can just check out what he said for yourself. So anyway, that's all what I want to say about that. So let's continue. Okay. I don't think I want to go to that right yet. So, okay, so let's continue here. Now, in the video where I talked about Pope Leo, And I mentioned about how his name, Leo the 14th, and how that 1 plus 4 is 5. And I talked about the 5 and how that ties to his name also, the Leo. And Leo is another zodiac sign, and it's actually the 5th zodiac sign. So that ties to the 5, the 5 energy, the Leo. So if you watched my previous video, I talked about that. And then I also talked about how Leo means lion. Leo is a Greek word for lion. And I also mentioned about the lion of the tribe of Judah. And it's strange how this Pope has partial Israelite ancestry. Very interesting. Now I want to take that a little further. Now I talked about the 7, the Libra. And I also talked about the passing of Pope Francis, 8 plus 8, and then 16, and then break it down further. 1 plus 6 is 7. Now you see a lot of 7 too. Now I'd already talked about the 5 in my previous video. So you have 7 and you have 5. Let's do some math. 7, 5 plus 7 equals 12. The 12 tribes of Israel. And as I told you before, the Pope has partial Israelite ancestry, and he acknowledges this. So there is something to this. Now, I'm not saying that this is all good, because this is the Catholic Church we're talking about. So you can't say that this is just all good, but it's good and it's bad. It's something underhanded going on here. There's something afoot. Because you mean that they're going to restore everything that they've taken away from us? No way, not by their own free will. Absolutely not. But these are signs. These are also signs that yes, what was taken away from us will be returned. But the powers that be, they're trying to get ahead of it. They're trying to so-called negotiate. They're trying to come up with a compromise. I'm going to break some things down here. And the reason why they selected such a pope with such a mixed ancestry. But yes, the 12, that 5 and that 7 is 12. The 12 tribes of Israel. Now, let's break that 12 down. Of course, 1 plus 2 equals 3. So, what does 3 mean? Now, of course, you're just doing a regular, AI search. The number 3, also, the mind, body, spirit, divine complete, also means divine completion, and the power of creation. And also the 3, a lot of people associate the 3 with the so-called Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But actually, the Holy Spirit should be mother. But that's another story for another day. That's a different discussion for a different day, because you think about in procreation, you have a father, mother, and child. So why should the creator be any different? And I'm not talking about multiple gods here. No, it's still one creator serving multiple purposes in masculine and in feminine. So I just want to say that. But anyway, yes, that 3. So we have the 3 here. Now let's look at the 3 even further. We have the third zodiac sign with this Gemini. So what's significant about the Gemini zodiac sign? What is its purpose of the third zodiac sign? What is its purpose? What is its function? Let's see. Gemini is the 3rd astrological sign, represented by the twins, ruled by Mercury, and associated with the air element. And these are the Gemini dates. So people who are Gemini, they're born, within these dates. And the symbol, the twins, representing duality, versatility, and two sides to every story. Now, I'm about to break that down. Let me continue though. Air meaning focus on the mind's ideas and communication. And then the ruling planet is Mercury, which governs speech, thought, and travel. Now, let's start with the two sides. I think about Pope Leo and what he said, that he has ancestors who were both slave owners and slaves. That would mean that he has ancestors who experience both sides of that situation. So that means he has ancestors who can tell, some can tell one side of the story, when others can tell the other side of the story. That's that too. That's that duality. And also, this pope is more vocal than any other popes that I recall, especially regarding like the presidents, for instance, like President Trump. This pope is very vocal, you know, in speaking out against the president, against the president of the United States. So it ties into that speech, that communication. Also, going back to the Libra, he's more diplomatic. You saw when he said that when he talked about for as the Catholic Church asking for forgiveness of the part they played in the slave trade, he's being negotiable, and that's why they selected such a pope. They call themselves, see, they don't want to relinquish their power. So they call themselves making a compromise. And I mentioned this a little bit in the one where I talked about Pope Leo and his possible connections to the Sibyls. They call themselves trying to make a little compromise. Well, we don't, well, what we can do, they try to appease, the incoming, powers, the incoming governorship, so to speak. And they're saying, well, we'll select a pope that has, just a little bit of African American, a little bit of Israelite. Of course, he's not gonna say Israelite, but but they know that the powers that be, especially the ones high up, they know who we are. We'll just select someone that has, a little bit of Black ancestry, Israelite ancestry, and maybe this will appease the incoming rulership. And maybe the judgment that the Most High that will soon bring won't be so severe, so to speak. So they think that by being diplomatic, by selecting a pope who is diplomatic and one who have some, and it look like, and this look like this is some, semblance of justice, this mixed pope. And they think that this could somehow, how can I say it, stave off their judgment. But I'm sorry, it's not going to work, because you've done too much dirt. You've done too much wickedness, which can't be erased. And you're going to have to face the powers that be. We'll have to face the judgment of what they've done to the world and to y'all's chosen people. So no, it's not going to work. And I just also want to mention, I said that I was going to mention the Sibyls, how if you watched my Sibyls playlist, especially where I did my commentary on the book, The Sibyls, and I talked about how the Vatican was once the sacerdotal seat of the Black African priestesses and prophetesses known as the Sibyls. And there were also male priests and prophets too, of course. But this was once the Vatican was once ruled by the Sibyls, by these Black priestesses and prophetesses. And this makes you wonder, well, what in the world happened? Why are they no longer in rulership? It's a long, long story behind that. And that's why I would recommend you check out my Sibyls book commentary to learn that story. Of course, it doesn't give tell all the story, but to get some understanding, at least some insight, at least on what happened and what caused the shift, and why the symbols are no longer in rulership in the Vatican. But anyway, I believe that's all I wanted to bring on this video. I'll talk about on this video. But yes, I just wanted to share that because, see, I thought that it was, one more thing. Now, you remember I was talking about the universal truth, how the Ma'at principle, the 7 principles of Ma'at represent the universal truth. And I brought out, 7 and things like that. Another thing too, in case you didn't know, Catholic means universal, general, or according to the whole. So the word Catholic means universal. So they call themselves representing the universal truth. The universal truth, they call themselves representing that. So I always just wanted to mention that, just thought that was very interesting. Seeing what's happening now, how they're really trying to walk in that quote unquote universal energy, that 7 energy. But as I said, it is not going to work because they've done too much dirt. So that's my message. And I just hope that you got something out of it. And I hope that you've been blessed by this word. And thank you for watching. And please feel free to like, share, leave a comment. You can also contact me. I include my email address. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. And until next time, be blessed.